welcome to another episode of Wise the Dome TV. Today, I have a very special panel with me, the host of Earn Your Liberation on Black Power Media, my brother Geechee, Jared, brother Diallo. Definitely appreciate the time and thank you for coming through.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
What's up, bro? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. So yeah, first I want to get into your book, Jared, as the myth and propaganda of Black buying power, the second edition. So what is the myth and propaganda of Black buying power, and what helps to fuel this myth? Because I was reading a book last week, Black Fatigue, and they had a chapter in there that was called What's Then Is Now. And she was going through, different statistics as far as within healthcare, within economics, that showed not much had changed from, emancipation and after Reconstruction and Jim Crow to now, as far as disparities in things such as health and wealth. But you hear these or see the propaganda that you speak of will say, yeah, we have I don't know what the number is that they say, but yeah, we have we're $1 trillion buying power and this and that nature. But we know as a whole, our people are not doing well as far as economics. And so what is this myth and propaganda of Black buying power?
Well, the short of it is, to the point you just finished with, it's an unreal fantasy imposed on us to make sure that we do not focus on political power and radical organization and movement building, and stay focused on a fantasy and a dream of being able to catch up to those who are rich and paraded in front of us as having all the money and the easy life. And what I've just started, really my work is just a subset of a long history of broader work criticizing Black capitalism and its impact on Black people and the limitations it puts on programs around quote unquote financial literacy and business development and investment, et cetera. And the point of the myth is to blame Black people for their own poverty. Right. So that's really it. So I just have always and it really stems from, that is, my work stems from asking the question that I would just encourage others to do whenever they hear the myth regurgitated: what is the evidence for that? And the short answer is that there is none. And when they look for it, they'll notice that they all point back to almost a singular source. And that source, as I try to show, is incomplete at best. It's baseless, So that's really that's the simplest and shortest way I can answer it.
Yeah. You stated in the first edition, and it may be in the second, I'm not sure yet, but that the idea that Garvey and Booker T. Washington doing business with their own as engaging in Black capitalism is in part routine and results from a bias rampant within commercial presses and media. And I also see this sometimes propagated within the so-called conscious community, people that take a pro-capitalist approach, I guess. Can you explain the error in looking at, Garvey's movement with the UNIA and Booker T. Washington, the error in looking at what they did through aspiring capitalist lenses?
Well, just quickly, I mean, that's a really big question, but quickly, the what you were looking at just there, the point I was really getting at is that one of the problems that we have is that a lot of the confusion stems from really bad journalism. And the journalism is itself set up to be bad because it's in a context where in the commercial realm, they're trying to attract ad revenue. And to attract ad revenue, they're trying to promote this idea that Black people have all this money ready to spend on the products these ad buyers are promoting in the pages and spaces of Black commercial media.
Mm.
So instead of investigating critically these claims about buying power, most of these commercial presses, and I highlight many examples in the book, they just regurgitate the myth and move on.
Right.
And so what I was trying to point out there is that one of the problems is what ends up happening is that too often they only talk about Garvey or Du Bois in the context of talking about buying power and business development and cooperatives and things like that, and never really get into either the broader political projects of either of them.
Right. Right.
So rather than me trying to, quickly, so the question for me is whether Garvey was right or wrong, or whether he was right here or wrong there, or the same for Du Bois. The point is, when they're discussed in popular media targeting Black people, they're only discussed in the context of this mythology of Black capitalism and business development. And that is one of the problems. And so that it allows for people to then say today, hey, if you're starting a Black business and telling people to invest in Black banks and circulate Black dollars and all of this, you're just like Garvey or Du Bois or whoever else. And you don't have to investigate the particularities of either of those men's projects or movements. Just go ahead and do what we're telling you to do today. And that was the point I was trying to make just then and there. My biases against capitalism, et cetera, are what they are. But I think that's, for me, that was the important point to try to make right there, that Du Bois and Garvey, they were not on the same page, but they both succumbed to this mythology at one point or another, at one point in time. And then they're both falsely presented only for that, so that we do the same thing again.
I think that's, great point. And I'm glad you mentioned that in the book, because when it comes to just even the title, the myth and propaganda, many people in our community have obviously bought into that myth and propaganda. And I've even seen it whenever I have conversations online with people who say that they are studied in, the different programs of Garvey and Du Bois and Booker T. Washington and, Martin Delany and all of these things. And whenever you critique capitalism, the first thing that they'll say is, well, Garvey was a capitalist, and so that's why my mind immediately went there, because of like literal conversations that I've seen, some of our brothers and sisters have. But when it comes to Black buying power, how is this, how the myth of it, right? How, when, as someone who has interviewed a lot of MCs and on this platform, and I've interviewed a lot of underground rappers, helped to get them shine, people that are actually really dope lyricists. I once read an article that it was written by a hip hop journalist in the UK, and the title of the article was "Hip Hop Has Become a Commercial for Capitalism," right, or something of that nature. And whenever we look at what this myth and propaganda is, when we look at hip hop culture and we look at, people such as Jay-Z, Puffy, Dr. Dre, all billionaires, all most, I would say 2 out of those 3 give the appearance of being down for the cause aesthetically. But how much of hip hop culture that we grew up with, that we love, is a part of this myth and propaganda that makes our people buy into the system that's exploiting them?
Well, a lot of it, I mean, and this is actually what Earn Your Liberation was formed to address in part, is that these myths that keep regurgitating themselves have long histories that predate hip hop, but that have been imposed on hip hop. So it's the condition of the community that is producing the culture is what is going to determine what myths it does or does not adopt, not what particular cultural expression they practice. So the mythology has a long history, and that was sort of the point of my own work, is that it goes back, to just after really it probably even in concept it probably it has always existed, but in official formulation is over 120 years old, and been passed on through generations. So that it would be adopted and imposed in commercial rap music is and beyond is not a surprise. Black people are not free, so the idea that they could then produce a culture that would free them is part of the confusion around the history of hip hop.
Right.
That's what we formed to do to address, is to try to challenge some of these mythologies, because they're everywhere. Right. So I don't blame people for succumbing to them. They're everywhere, and people and they're easily adopted, and they're algorithmically friendly, and there's money for it. So
yeah, for sure. Brother Diallo, I kind of wanted to ask you something similar. Like, when it comes to class consciousness, what are some of the ways, I guess, the powers that be that influence our people to buy into this system, buy into this capitalist system? What are some of the ways that they get our people to think that, hey, we can achieve liberation through Black business, we can achieve liberation through Black capitalism? What are some of the ways that that myth that Jared speaks about is propagated?
Well, Dr. Bobby Wright said that behavior is created and maintained by its consequences. And as Jared mentioned, Nixon pretty much informed the policing and intelligence agencies that they need to communicate the message to the Black masses that if they're going to be revolutionaries, that they're going to be dead revolutionaries. And so it was a carrot and stick method, saying that if you adopt radical anti-establishment or subversive ideologies or join such organizations, prison, premature death, and hardship will befall you. But on the stick side, but the carrot side is, if you embrace capitalism, if you adhere to the myth that hard work, sacrifice, delayed gratification, education, unity, and then you will succeed, and that anyone can make it in America. We are very familiar with what I call capitalist anthems of modern hip hop, but there were also quote unquote hopeful songs from the 60s and 70s that before, when people would want to inspire Black people, they would be songs of rebellion, but such as Bob Marley of that era, songs of rebellion and condemnation of the system. But you saw the music devolve into songs of celebrating success within the system, as opposed to songs celebrating resistance against the system. So it was a two-pronged attack of within the media, of demonizing and stoking fear of activism against the system, and promoting the myth that hard work will set you free, that you can earn your leisure. And so that's how it's gone. And it was reinforced not just in action and media, but the trick was everything that they told us we would avoid through submission and embracing the status quo and adhering to the path to power or the path to freedom or the path to wealth, everything we were supposed to avoid by abandoning Black revolution and Black rebellion, we got a more intensified version of. As the Black community abandoned radicalism and allowed COINTELPRO to decapitate our struggles, we were, again, as Nixon said, homicide rates, incarceration rates, poverty, displacement, instability intensified when we submitted. And it was more intensified under our submission to the system than it was during our embrace of the system. So, I mean, and it goes for most struggles. I remember Derek Jensen pointed out that in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, those who rebelled had a higher survival rate than those who submitted. And that's our pretty much what is not written or articulated in our history. And we've all seen the images of Malcolm X's corpse or Dr. King's body on the balcony, and they are very deliberate in making sure we don't see Robert F. Williams who engaged in ongoing rebellion, and he died as a very old man, surrounded by his loved ones and his families and his grandchildren. And he even predicted in his old age that he wouldn't be remembered or portrayed as much as the other ones, his peers, because he did live a long life. And even people that we even still have icons today, like Pete O'Neill, who is also, you know, living an enviable life on the motherland. So that's how they do it. It was a two-pronged attack. I think if it was strictly threatening Black people with harsh suppression, I think that could stoke rebellion, but and then empty promises of success and wealth would also be inadequate. But the two-pronged attack seems to have worked fairly well,
Oh
and
yeah.
we've yet to overcome it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And anybody can answer this. What when it I think whenever capitalism is critiqued, people that may not understand what capitalism truly is will say things like, oh man, you're not down for Black business or down for commerce. And I'm pretty sure you guys have heard that as well. Like, what's just for the record, when it comes to, you know, Black business in, I guess, here in America, what are your, we understand that it can't lead to liberation. Obviously, it can possibly lead to, I guess, some families living more comfortably. But is your critique on capitalism simultaneously a critique on Black business? Because a lot of times, you know, people conflate the two.
Yeah, so I think that's normally like the knee-jerk reaction of, you know, we don't support Black businesses. Me and my brother, we actually had somebody in our study group from Baltimore, actually after engaging Jared's book, was running around just telling everybody that, you know, Geechee and Asapo, they against Black businesses. But the critique is always just don't claim something that it can't do, right? So I had a brother who now is like one of the, you know, most known person in Charleston with the Black Food Truck Festival. And he said, you know, Black businesses are the key. And I'm like, key to what? And then he said, control. I'm like, control of what? And then so he danced around, and then he eventually said, control of your life. And so I was, you know, trying to explain to him like the idea of Black control when you only relegate it to certain industries, and then you're getting in at the very bottom of the industry. Like, you're not going to be able to, one, really create jobs, but also control the industry. And then even the jobs that you decide to get, right, are normally like relegated to salons, barbershops, selling T-shirts and stuff like that. And so, example, like Don Peebles, who was on Earn Your Leisure's platform, who, I don't know if they call him the richest Black man in real estate or whatever they call him. But when you look at his business, his annual revenue is like 2.3 million, right? And so if you spread it out to all his employees, that's 115,000 per employee, which I'm pretty sure they don't spread it out like that. But he's in a $4.4 trillion industry, which Keller Williams is making 381 billion.
Wow.
So that 2.3 million compared to 380 billion, like, we playing games.
Right.
Like, we don't want to like play games around power and all this other shit when you're not even scratching the surface, right? Keller Williams probably pay taxes in the above amount than they make in their whole revenue a year. So when we talk about political power, that's kind of what we're talking about. And when you say stuff like, well, we can get our money and buy politicians. And another example is, I think when LeBron was at 480 million or something like that, that was his net worth, right? And Bloomberg almost blew 480 million in a campaign that he wasn't going to win.
Right.
So you're not going to outspend them in buying politicians. So we don't hate Black business. We just say stop the cap, like the young folks say.
Yeah, that it's like it's not a means to the liberation of African people at home or abroad. Brother Diallo had a interesting and very profound comment on his last show, and I just wanted him to expound on it a little bit, because I never thought about it in this context. But I'm paraphrasing, but you said for those thinking that they can be liberated through capitalism, that every revolution has been a working class revolution, and there has never been an entrepreneur revolution. And I thought that was very profound. If you can just, obviously it's straight to the point, but if you can just expound on that some.
Well, I tried to be specific to state any progressive revolution, any revolution that has profited or benefit or brought concessions to favor the masses has always come from the bottom up. I did remember I spoke about the upper class revolutions where the monarchs were supplanted by the merchants.
Right.
And so when the mercantile class or the merchant class engaged in revolution, or the revolution carried out by George Washington, if you study those revolutions, which are the only revolutions we're really allowed to celebrate in the mainstream, where they actually have official holidays, the 4th of July, remember that revolution not only sustained and intensified slavery and the slave trade, there were many soldiers, white soldiers, that were hung, that were subjected to firing squads by simply coming to the new federation, the newly formed U.S. government, saying, "Where are my benefits? Where's what I was fighting for?" So the working class and the cannon fodder of these upper class revolution, or these bourgeois revolutions, or these bourgeois infighting, that we often call revolutions, end up bringing more intensified levels of repression. So yes, I mean, so specifically, there have been upper class factions who have rose up and undermined governments. There have been various sectors of power. Let's say you have the civilian government overthrown by the military apparatus, or you have the formal government overthrown by a faction of the business class. It almost happened after the New Deal was established. Several Wall Street institutional investors tried to foment a second American Revolution, and they went to a guy by the name of Smedley Butler to kind of lead this upper class. So I said the only and that's where we're kind of are, even though it's not truly revolutionaries, but reforms and movements and uprising led by LeBron James, Ice Cube, the Obamas and his class peers within the Black community, or even Beyonce at the Super Bowl halftime game in berets and black leather, trying to mimic the Black Panthers. So yes, any liberatory reforms, it's pretty simple. If there is a fundamental shift in the society and a fundamental change in the hierarchy, as a Black person, you have to look and say, would this Black person benefit from a just redistribution of resources? Would this Black person benefit or be harmed by a withdrawal of U.S. Army troops and and a dismantling of U.S. bases abroad? Would this particular Black individual benefit from true decolonization of the African continent? Would they lose in their status and standing, or would they gain? And once you can answer that question, you can pretty much determine, as far as looking at the elites, which ones we can depend on to fight with us and which ones we can see to ally. But the unfortunate thing is also, you can also answer the question saying, oh no, this Black person would gain. This Black person would gain access to housing, free healthcare, dissolution of their debt. But many of the Black people would still join with the oppressor or the elite classes. But yes, if it's going to, or as to quote Kwame Ture, only we can free us. And that we is not just our race, our culture, our community, but our class.
I'm all right, and that's a great segue here. I would like everybody to kind of chime in. You guys have had Dr. West on the show. I think he's been on since the campaign. He's he's been on Black Power Media maybe 3 or 4 times. And so I recently saw a few clips of him on the Jimmy Dore show, and I also saw a clip of that white leftist YouTuber named Vosh, right? And they were pretty much tackling the issue of, they pretty much said that tackling the issue of race is engaging in identity politics. And I have had these debates online with a lot of white leftists who say that, hey, the race issue will be rectified with a class solidarity. But, you know, a lot of times whenever we read, you know, Walter Rodney, you know, Kwame Nkrumah, CLR James, we understand that it's, for us, it's not always just, I mean, it is, obviously it is a class issue, but we cannot, you know, act as if there's not a race issue that is there as well. When it comes to this idea that a lot of white leftists have, and I'm pretty sure even some Black leftists who have been influenced by those white leftists, that class solidarity alone will kill the racism issue, and whatever movement adopts this. What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I just don't see it. Don't get me wrong, class solidarity is important, but as African people, we've always had an issue of race that we had to overcome. Anybody chime in?
Well, you know, Vosh, to the extent that I'm familiar with Vosh's work, seems sort of like a more or less standard Eurocentric, some form of Marxist, maybe.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Dore is, to the best I can assess, coming out of a relatively working class experience in Chicago. And to the extent I've watched any content from either one of them, I've never been made aware of their being aware of any perspectives coming from the world majority, that is so-called people of color and poor people. So in other words, for them to reach their conclusions and then be as aggressive as Dore was against West, I'm just curious, what is it based on?
Right.
What scholarship is informing you? What efforts have you made to engage Black literature, anti-colonial literature, these histories? Again, you could end up reaching the same conclusion. I just don't get the impression that they've taken any time to listen to Black thought or to even engage Black thought at all. And I just want to bring up very quickly that what remains very telling for me in my personal experience is the interview I did at some point this year with Norman Finkelstein about his new book. This is a man who, when it comes to the issues of Zionism, Israel, and Palestine, you may not agree with him or understand everything, but he's a genius and he's done all the work.
Right.
And his main argument is always read everything. You didn't read this, you didn't read that footnote from that page on this thing and that thing. But when he steps into the arena to talk about race and Black people, he reads like 3 things. And then he's referencing, his only references are from the few Black celebrity civil rights activists that he came in contact with in his lifetime for 30, 40 years ago. So you just done skipped over all of this work. Never mind, you know, and then so that's what I see happening in terms of now Dore, I think it would be more expected, but Vosh seems to represent that stereotypical, you know, that intellectual, condescending left intellect, you know, radical. You got all this intelligence for all this other literature, but you can't read for 5 minutes. I'll stop here and say this. One of my favorite stories is the story I tell all the time about the founder of the Real News Network, Paul Jay, who was this supposedly brilliant, and I would not say just supposedly. I think he's a very intelligent, well-studied activists, labor, media, blah, 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 blah. But one day we're talking and and he said, and I said, long story short, have you read Fanon? He said, no, send me some links. And I said, see, this is the issue, because if I said to you, if you said to me, if you read Marx, and I said no, and I said, send me some links, you would be like, what?
Right.
Send you some links.
Right.
To read Marx. Nah, man,
Right.
go do the work.
Right.
And then if you read Fanon, you'll understand why Marx had perhaps some shortcomings, or at least you'll understand why so many people in the African and beyond world have said Fanon is the man, or that analysis is important, and Marx has shortcomings. And then fast forward to today, you end up with Jimmy Dore and Vosh saying, how dare Cornel West devolve into identity politics? It's absurd.
Right. See, and I agree 100%. And that's, I think a lot of times this is, this is inherent racism, to not see scholars such as Frantz Fanon, Walter Rodney, and engage in any of these works, oftentimes misquoting Chairman Fred Hampton, because I've had a lot of these debates online, and this is what a lot of them do, but to disregard a lot of our works from leftists who understood and had an experience that white leftists don't have. And I believe Walter Rodney said one time that when it comes to Marxism, to fit the African paradigm, it has to be stretched, and due to the fact that a lot of like anytime we start to speak of any type of national identity, that ruffles the feathers of a lot of white leftists as well. Like, what are your thoughts on that, Brother Diallo?
Well, to quote my wife, you can't call freedom with your foot on someone else's neck. So if you are part of an oppressive group, a colonizer group, a group that sits higher on the hierarchy, and you also seek to claim that you're down for freedom, or you're down to change things, there's certain arenas you shouldn't be welcomed in, and you shouldn't even seek to take part of. I think Cornel West been laying down with a lot of dogs and getting up with fleas. Jimmy Dore is a fucking con man. Jimmy Dore is a right-wing apologist. He's a fascist apologist. He's not truly a leftist. I think Jared was spot on talking about Vosh, who is this arrogant and white savior. It's talking down as if they know better for Black people than what we know for ourselves. And this identity politics is not about identifying a particular type of politics. It's about stifling and suppressing and delegitimizing the voices of people who have identities that they don't deem worthy to wield power or to assert themselves. But I think Cornell needs to stop going on these goddamn racist cracker shows, calling these crackers his brother. Oh, my brother. If everybody your brother, ain't nobody your brother. Shame on him. He needs to come out since he came on. And when you invite somebody on your platform, you're giving them a voice, you're giving them an opportunity, but also the person, the invitee, the guest is also validating the host. Us coming on here as EYL or as individuals, we're giving weight to you, because
Right.
I'm not going to show up and sit across from a lot of people. I would never sit across from them. I don't give a damn how big their platform is or how much quote unquote exposure they can get. I'm not going on fucking Alex Jones' show.
Right.
There ain't enough exposure or payment like Farrakhan did, Rizza Islam. I'm not going on Alex Jones. I'm not going on the rapist, sexual predator Russell Brand show and sit across from him and call him. And not only do you go on the show,
You
you're like,
call
oh,
him
my
brother.
brother, and just gushing.
Wait a minute, I'm
over
sorry to
these-
interrupt. I missed that. RZA went on Alex Jones's show?
No,
I
who
know
he
you're
go
not
on?
wrong. Did he go on
He,
that show?
he went on some, I saw him pop up
Uh,
on some right-wing reactionary show.
Hold on.
Oh man.
I think he did. Was it
He
like
went
during
on,
COVID?
whose show did he go on? So
Let
I'm
me
not
see.
going, and
It
and,
wasn't
and if
like
I do,
Nick Fuente.
if
No, I'm just playing.
I mean, yeah, that too. But if you show me pop up on any of these platforms, I'm going to, do a denunciation, flip the table over, and walk out. It's going
Yeah,
to be an activist protest. It's
he
not
came
going to be
on.
no dialogue. You don't dialogue with people who delegitimize your existence. And I'm not about to debate. I think certain things Black people got no business debating.
Mm,
No self-respecting person of Jewish ancestry or Jewish faith is going to debate a Holocaust denier.
right.
So don't think any Black person should sit across from any other non-Black person and debate racism, debate the legitimacy or relevance of race within any struggle, debate the lunacy that class can trump race or anything else, and so as far as these white so-called leftists, many of them are not leftists. They don't hold to leftist goals or values or standards or ideology or agendas. And Jimmy Dore is just like, for him to be able to still parade, that's just a way for him to grift his listeners, a way for racist white people to say, hey, there's a guy on the left who agrees with me, who literally agrees with everything, supports all the people I support, wants all the things I want, but he's leftist. So the people on their side, it's a grift. It's a
So,
hustle. It's
like,
a way to get money from some of the most most wealthy and also delusional population, which are racist white people. They got all the majority of the resources and they hold to most of the delusions and lunacy. And if you can validate their delusions and lunacy, they will give you some of their money. So and Cornel West, I think he's is very questionable to me. Some of these places he's showing up. And even if he shows up, how friendly and cordial many of those exchanges are.
right.
And then and you see, as he's starting to get this criticism for telling some truths, you see that's when the fleas have gestated and hatched from their eggs and starting to bite you
Mm.
because they see most of these black leading Blacks as disposable. As long you no longer serve the purpose because they're using him to attack the Democrats, using him to attack. He's being used,
Do,
and so
do you think, when I did an interview last night with Mama Akwete, who owns Pan African Connection bookstore in Dallas, Texas, been open since 1989, opened by her and her husband, the late Ben Deli. And we were talking about real political education. And she was telling me about, her years in the All African Revolutionary Party and how they would, study Marx, Lenin, and the Black Panther Party and her time that she spent with Kwame Ture and things of that nature. And then I remember one time I went in there and I bought, I believe the name of the book is called History of Pan African Revolt, CLR James. And then she had pulled me to the side and she was just telling me about these study sessions that they used to have where they would read these type of works. And now, like Geechee posted something the other day where it was, I believe it was 19 Keys and Saha the Prince, and they were, the culture stop thought leader, and they were on, I'm not sure, I guess it was his platform, and Saha began to talk about some granite, like Stone Mountain connection with Egypt and the vibration, and like it got real wild. And then brother 19 Keys was like, yeah, man, and that's the place where the KKK was founded, and obviously it was founded in Tennessee, and I'm asking, there are a lot of platforms, like Black Power Media. I have, you know, a lot of friends that the Brother Diallo show, what I strive to do here at Wise the Dome TV. Um, Obviously, Black media is important. What is the allure, though, of with our people and the gravitation towards all of this pseudo shit when it comes to, you know, what they interpret being radical as or being conscious as? It all seems like it's a holdover from religion. A lot of these uh you know, figures who have these extremely large platforms, you know, have religious like followings. um when the obviously the goal is liberation. That's the name of y'all show, Earn Your Liberation, liberation for all oppressed people at home and abroad. With that said, though, what do you think the allure is with a lot of this space cadet Marvel comic book scholarship compared to things that could actually uh, help us and lead us towards the right direction as far as how we do earn our liberation?
I mean, I think it initially starts out with fair. And I think that's why you would get all the non-confrontational air quote solutions. And so I'm not as versed and not as I don't want to say professional as Kalanji. So when he had Killer Mike on there and there was some disagreements, but one of the major disagreements I've had with, well, with one of the brothers I grew up with, Charlemagne, we would argue about almost anything, but then he like, well, don't bring it to me. Just take the guns and go, you know, go to the white man or whatever. And again, it's always the dumbest type of rhetoric. Um, and so I even think about a Amilcar Cabral's quote in Resistance and Decolonization. And it says, it is necessary to struggle with political consciousness in one's head. It is necessary that we be aware that it is the consciousness of a man that guides the gun and not the gun that guides his consciousness. The gun counts because the man is behind it, grasping it. And it is worth more the more the conscience of the man is worth. And the more the man's conscience serves a well-defined, clear, and just cause. So when you think about Black businesses, you think about all these other, I guess, non-confrontational, fearful measures with the financial literacy propaganda and all of this, you know, Black capitalism as power, it becomes even more attractive and people to have like a militant response to I guess their oppression, right?
Right.
I'm working on this framework that's called the 4 responses to white hegemony. And you have like the homicidal response being 1, suicidal 2, assimilation 3, but then a radical confrontational revolutionary one would be the 4th one. And so if all the other 3 are non-confrontational, that gives you like a plethora of like creative ways to just not confront the people who causing you the most harm.
Well, Geechee, well, let me ask you this though. How do we get the people to engage in that, right? And the type of framework that you're creating and the type of frameworks that already exist that help to outline what the root of our oppression, the root of our discontent here in America, compared to like I saw, like I was scrolling down YouTube. I don't know how. I don't watch this stuff. I don't know how it became a part of my algorithm, but it was Billy Carson was on you know, Danica Patrick, the woman that used to drive the Formula. Yeah. Apparently she's a big podcaster now, and she had him on, and they were talking about, you know, like traveling through different dimensions and space aliens coming down. It had like millions of views, and when you see this type of content, like it's so sensational. How do we get people to say, hey, this right here is entertainment, but there's also an alternative that can assist you in, helping you and helping to guide you in a direction that will make you more, politically astute, more politically educated, and can lead to real tangible, real tangible things that can make our lives a little bit easier, compared to, hey man, let's have a 3-hour conversation about aliens and crypto.
So I think it's kind of essentially what we are trying to do at Black Power Media, and then other spaces of having a multifaceted approach to political education, type of conversations that increase political sophistication. And then also with, me and my brother who transitioned, I mean, we started with, writing children's books, right? Because I think political education should start at first and second grade. Study groups for adults, people who are in the academy, writing curriculums. But I think it's a multifaceted approach that we need to take, but also a realization that it's going to be tough. And again, back to the Kalanji thing, I think, I mean, many might argue and disagree, but maybe those type of conversations with Killer Mike, the way he did, might be useful. It might be useful for people who are in the rap industry who can look at somebody as powerful as Diddy and somebody as powerful as Jay-Z looks like a bunch of nobodies to the actual capitalists. I remember we talked about on Earn Your Liberation when Jay-Z was trying to get into the weed industry. I guess he called one of the execs and they was like, "Who's Jay-Z? Like who?" And they was like, "Oh, he's one of the biggest rappers." And it was like, "Oh, well, we can just use him for marketing." Right. And so, and Diddy would get on stage, Earn Your Leisure, and say he was doing marketing pretty much. And so when they start to see those contradictions, and then you have more of a radical platform that could engage with those people and highlight their contradictions, I guess maybe that's a step in the right direction. But I think we just need all hands on deck, to be honest.
Indeed, indeed.
Oh, the reason why is quite simple. Why you got a lot of fakers is because to be a fake radical, be a fake shaman, to be a fake scholar allows you to reap all of the rewards and assume none of the risk. So it would be very easy to get on here and spew very stimulating rhetoric and to make calls or pronouncements or condemnations. But if it's not rooted in anything that is viable, demonstrable, non-falsifiable, if it's not rooted in anything that can be followed back to a solid core, then again, like I said, you assume you reap all the rewards of being a revolutionary and face none of the risk. And I think that's what's so attractive or rewarding, but that's not limited to the conscious community or the esoteric spiritual community. It's the same thing with gangsters. I mean, if I could rap and I really wanted to be successful, I'm not a gangster, ain't a gangster bone. I'm the most non-gangster, thing you can imagine. But I front to be a gangster, pretend that I'm a gangster.
You're a plant gangster, man.
Like Tupac.
Hey, whoa, man.
Like Ice Cube. I'd rather pretend that I'm a gangster, and then I reap all the rewards, and theoretically I can avoid the sanctions and the consequences that come in putting in real work. But sometimes it doesn't always work.
Right.
You might convince the streets that you're a real gangster, or you might convince the feds you're a real revolutionary, and end up losing your license. Like Umar, you have your license on the line, and you got to run up in that council meeting with your tie and your starch suit and your briefcase and say, "Oh no, I'm just out here, calm down, to preserve your, So anyway, I think that's the main impetus, you to reap rewards and avoid risk.
Understood. Jared, I wanted to kind of ask you this, especially with you being at Morgan State, right? Coach Prime, former Hall of Fame cornerback for the Atlanta Falcons and Dallas Cowboys, former coach of Jackson State University and graduate of the HBCU Talladega, who's now the current
favorite celebrity.
Yeah, current coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. Two things. He had a 60-minute interview last night, and if I'm not sure if you saw it, but 60 Minutes showed 83% Black Jackson. To represent Jackson, they showed a dilapidated shotgun shack, and they juxtaposed that with showing Boulder as the affluent county that it is, which is Boulder County. And so, we've seen the Rock, Wu-Tang Clan, Lil Wayne brought out Colorado at the game. They put gold chains and all types of jewelry on the buffalo itself. and I've even seen some academics on Twitter with the blue check start to call Colorado an HBCU now. And
wow.
Yeah, I saw.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw.
Please, I'm at I Mix What I Like. Please tag me when you see that.
All
please,
right, most
please
definitely
tag me.
I got you.
I want in.
Yeah, I'll look for it as soon as we get off the show. But I saw that with my own personal, and it was like I can't remember if it was people in academic spaces or people that are sportscasters, but they were definitely blue checks with a lot of followers. But either way, this idea that Coach Prime is what he's doing in Colorado is a win for Black people. And also the narrative that I am seeing, in order to everybody, people that are fans of Coach Prime, people, in order to justify and prop up, and it needs no justification. A man can do what he wants to do. But in order for them, in their own minds, I believe, to justify his move to Colorado, the whole narrative is what Jackson State isn't, and the inherent inability for HBCUs to handle their own business. When it comes to all of this, like, what are your thoughts on the Coach Prime spectacle that we are witnessing in real time?
So let me start by saying I am by no means an apologist for HBCUs, having taught at one for going on 18 years. And I have a Not a Different World project that people can get at I Mix What I Like and participate in if they've gone to an HBCU or been a parent or an admin, staff, faculty, etc. But that said, what Deion is doing to me is the perfect storm of a microcosm example, if all that is not mixing metaphors and all that, whatever, of what we're all talking about. Here is somebody with an exceptional skill set who has had an exceptional career, led an exceptional life, who then wants to talk about the rest of the Black world as if it should have been able to do what he has done, and not recognizing that he has only been invited to do what he has done because of his being exceptional. Go ahead, Diallo, go ahead.
It's not just because he's exceptional, and there's a lot of exceptional Negroes that think that they are able to do what they do the way they are doing it because of their talent alone.
Oh, no, I hadn't finished, though.
Yeah, I ain't saying you said it. I just want to, okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, though. Make the point. It's okay. Go ahead.
If not for collective struggle, Jordan would have been dunking cotton bales in satchels. So even if you're an exceptional Negro, the capacity and ability for you to rise through the ranks is still a result of collective struggle, collective sacrifice.
And to the extent he played baseball, it's literally the collective bargaining that was at the back of Curt Flood's prior sacrifice.
Exactly. So even if you got the greatest talent in the world, And not to mention, he was able to drink non-contaminated water and eat non-contaminated food and
Yeah.
travel on roads that were maintained as a child, that were maintained by the working class. The exceptional Negro, you drop him in a deserted island. You know, it is still his talent, and what he was able to accomplish was still a collective endeavor and still a byproduct of collective struggle and collective sacrifice. And he is indebted both to the ancestors and the community, and he's also owes an obligation to descendants.
So I'll just pick
Rich
up.
people,
I'll let.
ball
That's a
chasing
better
ass,
version of what
homeless.
I was going to do. What I was then going to say after that is then he comes into the HBCU experience and starts looking around, having been at Florida State, and not just Florida State, like even a regular Florida State. He was at Florida State like a primetime athlete.
Oh, most definitely.
Then he goes to Jackson and starts looking around. He's like, what's going on here? Why are you all living like this? And blames, just starts accepting all the mythology we've been talking about here, starts his complaint by blaming the Black universities, the least funded, the least resourced, who he starts talking without any recognition that he understands the relationship that HBCUs have to the broader university system, the political economy of higher education, and starts talking about as if they're in Alabama sitting on a potential that they're squandering. It's the sports equivalent to my buying power argument. It's the Black capitalist fantasy that we're all here, we all work to explode weekly, that or more beyond that, but all the time. So he and then he does what the Black business community always does. They use their Blackness and to Diallo's point, references to Black struggle and Black collectivity so they can get the big white investment, the big bag. That's the ultimate goal, to sell that business and get shipped out to Colorado. And then he turns around, he can say, I'm bringing some people with me. Somebody just told me today in my class, but Dr. Ball, he brought like 20 or 30 or 80 Jackson players with him. Ain't he doing? He brought the hood. And they said what you were saying. He's making it to HBCU. It's this, that, and the third. And it's a complete nonsensical aberration and absurdity that plugs into everything we've been talking about, and that's why it's so successful. It doesn't seem absurd because the apparatus to interpret it has already been constructed. So it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Deion, of course, go Deion, go.
Right. And so you also get the mythology that's created from the bad journalism. So right after the CSU coach talks shit about him or whatever, people are saying like, oh, look how a Black man moves. And he signs a deal with the Shades company, right?
Yeah.
And I posted the video, but literally they had that deal when he was leaving Jackson State. They literally had that deal, right? And they really targeted him because he was looking for some shades, and they targeted him like he's gonna be able to influence some people. And so when you say the 2.1 million in one day, that's not Deion money. He gonna get his little kickback, but that's not Deion money. Right.
But it's not framed that way. It's framed that this is Deion's money. And I've been to Denver, Colorado, but I've never been to Boulder. And I just wanted to, just looked up instances of institutional and individual racism within Boulder County, and that shit is crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah, I'm Colorado. I've been to Colorado. That shit is no joke. Like I said, that shit is no joke. The racism there and
but what does that? But what does that mean? Like as far as Deion coming to Colorado, I saw a stat that showed you could have went to every Colorado home game for like $225, like total last year when they were 1-11. To sit on the Colorado side, if the article is correct that I read, was about $400 last Saturday for the Colorado State game. I see a lot of articles come down my timeline about how much revenue he's bringing to Boulder. The year before, I'd read similar articles about Jackson, that he was Prime's presence and you know, his son Shador, and you know, because Shador is obviously a really good quarterback. Travis Hunter was a 5-star recruit that, you know, all of the other schools like Alabama wanted. But either way, he got them to go to you know, he got him at Jackson State. You know, they talked about in the beginning what a service they at least they framed it that way, a service that he was doing for the community of Jackson. And now you see articles that are talking about the service and all of the revenue that he is bringing to Boulder, which, as me and Diallo just said, is filled with you know, it's a lot of racists out there, man. And I looked up every institution that I could think of, and there were articles. There's even a documentary coming out on PBS, I believe, about Boulder is considered, I guess it's something amongst white people that Boulder is the happiest county in America. And it's also one of the most racist. Yeah, but
or it's very white too.
Yeah,
Extremely white. But
weed and white.
You know, Deion Sanders is, albeit a well-rewarded commodity, he is still a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he is. And that's what we've been since the day we got here. And you know, he can have all the trinkets he wants. I recall his name back in the day was Prime Time. He is an entertainer. I remember Black people used to always say, all we got is sports and entertainment, as if sports isn't entertainment. And I know I'm forbidden, but I'm gonna do it anyway, to quote Claude Anderson prior to his fall from grace. He said Black people were brought here for the profit, leisure, and entertainment and comfort of white people. And Black people fulfilling that role for extra bucket of chitlins, or Black people fulfilling that role for a huge sum of fiat currency and all the luxuries that industrial capitalism can afford, it still doesn't change the power dynamic. Wealthy Black people, even though institutions were built on their talent, societies and continents and cultural trends can be moved by their talents. They have no more institutional power than us. They only have greater consumption capacity. While we're standing in line to fly coach, they're flying private jets, but it's still under the power, the control, and the capacity to destroy by our oppressors. So we're trading the ability to construct, conceptualize, construct, and operate a society. We literally traded that for the opportunity to buy what other people manufacture or are willing to sell us. And that's it. And so it pains me. I made a post about Deion Sanders, and I've been bombarded by his groupies all afternoon.
This is what I wanted to ask you, brother.
Middle-aged male group.
Of course,
brother
Diallo. This is what I wanted to ask you though. Like, how do you respond to a critique where the only response is, "Oh, brother Diallo, you hating"?
Well, I try to respond in a way that will offend them and upset them, but not provoke them to violence. That's how I respond. I try to come up with the slickest, most disrespectful thing I can say, just to upset them, but not provoke them to act. But I had a grown-ass middle-aged man tell me that Deion Sanders is a legend and I'm nothing. So, you know, and he's right.
Here's what I've noticed though. I grew up playing sports. I love just the thrill of athletics and competing, and you know, was playing in the football in the street, and you know, just that whole idea, right? Grew up watching, you know, football with my pops. Just sports has always, you know, kind of been a part of my source of entertainment or actual exercise if I played it literally. The thing that I noticed though, and I saw this a lot during the time with Kaepernick and what he was going through. And then, you know, the emails that get leaked ever so often since the John Gruden thing that have shown certain owners overt racism and misogyny. And then you have, and so if I, and so we have all of these institutions within America. Most of them, you know, we could agree have some form of institutional racism built within them. Whenever the most well-studied person that I've found in a lot of cases are okay with the critiques of every other institution, but when it comes to America's main source of entertainment, more than likely, which is probably sports, any critique brings out a lot of anger or cognitive dissonance in the people that are witnessing that critique. Time after time, we saw what the Bills owner come out and say, like, hey, man, you know, we're talking about ownership in the NFL. I guess emails between him and Jerry Jones, the Bills owner said something of the fact that if they don't like it, they can go back to Africa. Jerry Jones, who is the owner of the team that I grew up rooting for, having lived in Arlington, Texas for over 25, 30 years. He said something of other nature where, you know, will tell blacks to, you know, find somebody, you know, to get their own team and hire who they want. And we also remember, you know, how Jerry and a lot of other NFL owners reacted during, you know, public protests of NFL players. And I'm not knocking anybody who finds entertainment in sports. I'm not doing that, but I'm just saying I've noticed that regardless to what institution I may critique or offer up an analysis about, when it comes to the NCAA, the NFL, and the NBA, I get way more pushback there than I do when I critique any other institution.
Well, I guess for a question, would you think that's because basketball, football are the only institutions or environments to where there's a strong image of we're dominating? Right? Baseball, maybe not so much, but basketball and football, like all the best players, all the whoever are normally African people. So would that be, do you think it's a response of like, you know, this what we have pride in, or patriotism, or whatever the hell we have in it? And I guess taking that away, you know, you go back into defeatist, how people call us, and
yeah. And I'm not saying to take it away. I just offer up just perspective. And I think you're right. That's probably part of it. Also, the idea that our sons can possibly grow up and play in these leagues and bring the family out of poverty or you know, economic no man's land. But I just found it interesting, you know, that when it comes to, because personally, as much as I love football, as much as I love the NFL, you know, it's been I haven't watched the game this year. It's been just with all the news that comes out about everything. It's been hard for me in good conscience, you know what I mean? And I know Brother Diallo has, you know, critiques these sports leagues often. But you know, why do you think that, I guess, what is our emotional attachment with these leagues? You know, we often hear about the Roman quote about bread and circus, you know. Does that have anything to do with it? Are we just that entertained and that attached, or do we see it as a way out? What is it rooted in?
Well, here's the thing. I grew up. I have 5 big burly uncles, all over 250, 260, all over 6 feet tall, and they were all men's men. And I could honestly say that the only time I've seen them like freely emote, show sorrow, show like immense joy, embrace another man, and hold him tight was through the conduit of sports, through ball chasing.
Mhm.
Whether it's a loss of a crucial game or the winning of a championship or the recruitment of a prospect, I've never seen like brothers that, you could go to and be like, well, your child is born. Oh, that's cool. That's straight. Or someone's been injured. Oh, dogs, what we gonna do? You need a few dollars? You hurt? But when it's like, oh, the championship, we going to the playoffs. Oh, like men. So I think for in a patriarchal system that most men collectively and men. So even though it is the manifestation, the highest manifestation of manhood, this bravado on the ball field, it also provides a safe space for men to engage and to demonstrate emotions that in many other circumstances, especially in public,
Hmm.
you know, especially in public, allows men. So I do think that is a factor to consider as we discuss whether we should get rid of sports or the legitimacy. I think that pro sports should be abolished. I'm for the complete elimination of pro sports league and for an absolutely for private ownership of pro teams and for the restructuring of collegiate sports. Uh, but I am very much a proponent of sports to for anyone that has that interest, for anyone who has that talent, for them to have a conduit or an outlet to express it.
Right.
But it has to, like everything else of that we want to preserve and keep functional, it has to be removed from the capitalism and the
Yeah.
profit motive. But yeah, so I do understand all that other the manhood, but it's ironic that the highest way we can demonstrate our manhood is also the place where we can demonstrate our vulnerability or act in ways that contradict what this twisted, sick, patriarchal society tells us manhood is. I mean, I seriously, you know,
Hmm.
it's to have non-sexual, uh, but intimate or real contact with another man amongst men. Most men will never get that outside of being in a sports environment or being in a part of a fandom of sports. You can't even do that with music. If my favorite rapper go platinum, I'm not gonna be high fiving and hugging my homies. You know, and if you tried that, they'd be like, "Yo, get the fuck off me." So that's the only place. If you can name another place where men can do those things,
Yeah, no, and I agree.
let
And
me know.
but also too probably I just thinking about it, growing up playing the camaraderie that you have with your teammates. A lot of times we probably reminisce about that as we watch the game and things of that nature. Brother Geechee, I wanted to ask you this though. You guys had I watched JT the Pocket Watchers channel because I like analysis on to see what the scammers in the community, because I've been talking about the scammers online way before I even got on YouTube. It's not hard to tell who's who's scamming and who's not, right? Or whose aim is to it, regardless. But anyway, I watched this show y'all had with Earn Your Leisure, and I'm not Earn Your Leisure, JT the Pocket Watcher. And I do, like I said, I do watch his show. I saw his last one might have been about Ben and crypto, and but I saw on another episode of Earn Your Liberation, Geechee, you kind of mentioned that, because I guess from watching JT, I kind of my algorithm started showing, I guess, like the Tony the Closer and a lot of these other content creators that occupy that same space. And I think I've heard JT call it I'm paraphrasing here, I might have gotten it wrong, but accountability tube or accountability channels. And and Geechee, you said something on one of the shows where you was like, yeah, but the trajectory for a lot of these accountability channels might be the same type of big stage and courses that a lot of that you know uh, that a lot of the people that they may make content about are doing. Like they're in line to kind of to possibly follow in those footsteps, maybe without some of the scamming. But like, well, what was your like, how did you formulate that? And for the people that may say, okay, like if he does or if they do, like what's wrong with that? Like how would you respond?
So Jared or Diallo are not religious, man, but I follow the gospel of 3-6 Mafia that
Oh,
says
me too.
bands will make her dance. Bands will make her dance. So so we all can agree that poverty and wealth is built through public policy, violence, and fraud, right? That's something that JT will not be willing to admit, and obviously Earning Leisure will not be willing to admit. And ironically, Jonathan, I forgot his name already, but the guy, he was one of the guys who was a speaker, and he pretty much made his stardom to fame from frauding, like literally using social security numbers and then EBT fraud. It got so bad that we covered it on the show that he said a little boy was trying to struggle against him because he wasn't paying him, and then they got caught, and he was thinking about killing the kid. But anyway, so the goal is eventually to get to a place where white capital gets your attention. So when Earn Your Leisure is on the stage, they're talking about, well, the white people was doing this, they'll have money. And so eventually the goal for all black businesses, and I think Jared kind of goes to this, is again to attract white revenue. And so as white revenue comes, you'll see Earn Your Leisure do less fraudulent and deal with less fraudulent people, which again attract JT, because JT, again, they land in the plane the same way. It's just JT don't want you to cheat to get there, right? He wants you to use the legal criminal ways as opposed to the criminal ways. And then I think Tony the Closer is actually that bridge between Earn Your Leisure and JT. So just as well as Tony was auditioning to get on the stage next year, JT will be on the stage in a couple of years too. Because again, they want to show you that black people can survive in this capitalist system as opposed to destroying it or talking about redistribution.
I think, and that's a great point. And I think what was interesting about that episode, as Jared was attempting to, bring a framework that had, the exploitative nature of capitalism, within it, and JT was like, nah, I get that, but we're in a capitalist society, and so we gotta do what we have to do. And obviously, food, clothing, and shelter, and the ability to feed your family, it's not anything that I think anyone who critiques capitalism is telling people not to do what they have to do to ascertain. But sometimes I have to say that and point that out, because I know and understand just from conversations that I've had with a lot of people that a lot of times a critique of capitalism isn't something that they are used to engaging in. A lot, in a lot of cases, we not in all, and I'm not generalizing any, because I love my community. Right. Even the crazy parts, I suppose. But we, a lot of times, our idea of what was conscious was, saying Jesus was black, or proving that the Prophet Muhammad was black, or or you know, like
The richest black man in the world.
or Mansa Musa, or yeah, or esoteric information, right? You remember like in the 80s, like what's his name? Delbert Blair, like was extremely possible and I mean popular. And but um I'm saying that to, you know, just thinking about that episode, I only saw it the time that it came out.
Right.
Jared, whenever you know, kind of brought up like, hey, you know, but do we kind of agree that capitalism is you know, exploitative in nature and is not a means to earn your liberation? Like I know that's not exactly what you said, but I just remember you bringing up your critique of capitalism to him. Do you find the type of response that he gave at, like, you know, yeah, I do agree that, you know, it's exploitative, but you know, while we're in it, we have to do what we have to do. Do you find that to be a common response to your critique of capitalism in some circles?
So real quick too, right? So literally, he just JT just had a show that's titled, and actually he looks like he's scaling a little bit. He looks like he's getting more revenue, and he's actually doing live radio for a bigger brand. But the title says, "Fast food workers don't deserve $22 an hour," and then changing my mind. And then he get on and start talking about how they don't deserve this type of money. They entry level, and they don't understand what it takes to own a business. The policymakers don't understand what it takes to own a business. So there's no way in his mind that he could even begin to understand that capitalism exploitive. And again,
But
even though Diallo disagreed that we didn't challenge him a little, but we were clear that we don't drive in the same direction that you drive. And he kept saying, no, we the same. Like, no, we're not the same.
he was right in y'all faces and spewing that whole black people are poor because we mismanage our resources and we're irresponsible. Right in your house.
We stall them out, Debo. We
Right
stall
in
them
your
out.
house.
We
I
about to
don't
stall
think
them out,
so,
Debo.
man. Okay. I'm just saying, man, y'all should have. Okay.
Anyway, so I mean, you know, first of all, to your point about, you know, like it's not let's be clear, it's not bashing black people in terms of how I understand the problem, to be saying that the pinnacle of empire has put excessive resource and energy to developing methods to mess with people's public opinion. And white people are just as, if not more so, disturbed in their consciousness and worldview and their propagandized. What did Charles Mills say? That white supremacy has created a set of consensual hallucinations to the point where white people can't even interpret the world they created, as he put it. That talk about brilliant. That dude was brilliant. Yeah. But so we're all heavily propagandized, and the messaging is very sophisticated. And for somebody like JT, who proudly talks about his Howard University education, it stands to reason that he would have zero understanding of how capitalism actually works as an economic and social system.
But
so
don't you see like how that just sounds crazy? Somebody with an economic background from a prestigious university in Howard, but not understanding how capitalism works.
Listen,
no, it's
well, real quick. There's I don't know who said it, but we had a conversation in the men's group that is the likelihood for a black student at a PWI studying political science will be more radicalized faster than a black student at a black college, simply because of the paternalistic creation of black colleges and the desire to make black people acceptable into an already well-functioning economy. Is like, of course they're not going to hear about critiquing cap. I mean, unless they take Jared's class, but that's, you know, that's a different conversation.
Every semester, no, it's cool. I mean, and I think that I think we should revisit that project and maybe even see if we can build out an actual study Don't let me forget that. I think that's a good idea.
Let's do it.
I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. Every semester I ask my students if they've ever had any sustained, if they've ever been invited to any sustained study of what capitalism is. And I'm not aware that in 18 years I've ever had a hand go up. And I'm not even talking about, can you define it? What is it? I'm just asking, have you been invited to study it? And every once in a while, somebody will say, I had a radical high school teacher, or I had somebody in the class, I had a class here or there, but for the most part, so I'm not surprised. And there's nothing within, and again, from the faculty perspective, and this is why I started that Not a Different World project, because I want to do a longitudinal study of sorts to collect stories and experiences that demonstrate beyond just some histories and some books and my own personal experiences that this is the intended outcome. The JTs of the world are by design. And then he can again, it's a version of what we've been talking about in terms of Deion and everybody else. He can promote himself as, and his crew promote themselves as these like sort of black superheroes, and all promoting at the end of the day a system that legally by design exploits and extracts and expropriates and rips people off and suppresses people and violates people, but at least they're not doing it as scam artists with selling courses. So he's all right with it, and I mean, I honestly, I think, just for the record, I think it's important that if people do end up seeing our interview with JT, that they hear Diallo's criticism. I'm not entirely in disagreement. I think I understand why Geechee and I handled the interview the way that we did, but I get the critique and I get the desire for more confrontation with that thought. But anyway, but I'm not surprised to hear he's scaling up and he's going to be doing very well. And I wouldn't be surprised. I think, Geechee, you predicted he's going to be on an Invest Fest in coming years. They'll heal up that relationship and that thing will come full circle. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I definitely could too. That's why I thought Geechee's that was an interesting thought. But go ahead, Brother Diallo.
I'm saying we spent the last 3 decades celebrating drug dealers and predators, making it legit.
Yeah.
I mean, Jay-Z said that he was still spending money from 1988 from selling drugs. He hadn't even touched his rap money yet. And we celebrated
came to this
that.
motherfucker
So
100 grand strong from grinding G packs.
Right. So why would we expect people who scammed people, who people who literally assisted the CIA in hollowing out the Black community, who are literally, by default, government agents of insidious agenda, if they can come back? Ricky Ross, the real Ricky Ross, is toward the goddamn country, showed up in my own city to sold out crowds.
He showed up in my classroom.
and Black Mafia Family got a hit TV show. So I do think we could, be called out for sitting here condemning scammers making good and scammers being reformed and going legit when murderers, drug dealers, predatory elements of our community make good. People who literally said it's hard not to kill niggas, full-time job not to kill niggas. If we can let Snoop Dogg pimp our women and show up on national TV with Black women on a dog chain, and then for the right amount of money.
I forgot about that. I forgot
on the right amount of money, and then he's standing next to Martha Stewart, no chains in sight. So I don't want to sit here and anybody call us out and be like, oh, these scammers are now legitimate businessmen. We've been celebrating this type of bullshit, pimp to preacher, been going on since Reconstruction era, and we've been letting it happen. People who got either reaches or got the attention of the white majority through exploitation and demeaning the Black oppressed classes, then get legitimized and get a house in a gated community, and all of a sudden are able to walk red carpets or sit in cocktail rooms or sit in boardrooms or sit or stand on the stage next to presidential candidates. You know, it makes me sick. And then people go off on me for because I remember. I hold on to that shit. I don't forget the betrayal just because you're doing good now. You didn't learn better. You know.
Say your line real quick. If we can't be down with you, if we're not up with you, what's your line? Say
thank you. If we can't, if we can't be, wait.
If we can't be up with
what did I say? Oh, if we can't be up with you, we're not gonna be down. He flipped it. If we can't be up with you, we shouldn't be down with you.
Right.
All right. So I have one last thing I wanted to ask you guys again. Thank you guys for coming through. For everybody who may not be familiar with Black Power Media, you're definitely missing out. Go ahead and to Black Power Media now and subscribe. Also, Earn Your Liberation is a weekly podcast that comes on Black Power Media on Friday mornings. Make sure you're definitely subscribe and tune in. Extremely great content. All right, and so with that said, I think Cop City it's something that I got mostly, I would say, like my entry point into even seeing the story was on Black Power Media. And you know, we talk about the militarization of the police. We talk about Cop City possibly, you know, I believe didn't go ahead.
Brother, I got to stop you right there. We only rise up against injustices that are $100 million, that are, you know, no, what is the injustice price?
It got 100 million tag on
budget, if the budget of the injustice is over $10 million, we bow down.
We only talking to you, Rakeem, because we not talking to y'all.
If the budget for injustice, there is an injustice budget. So, you know, if there is an injustice budget, you know, if you go to Cuddly Mike and say, you know, do you oppose the Holocaust? He's like, wait, how much did Hitler spend on them gas chambers? How much Hitler put up for them gas chambers? Do you oppose apartheid? You oppose apartheid? I don't know if I oppose apartheid. How much does the South African government pay? How much revenue does South Africa generate from those gold mines in South? You know, before I can oppose an injustice, I gotta know the budget.
He'd have been like, man, slavery's big, man. They got a lot invested in that joint, man.
Joe,
you know,
listen,
right?
We can't.
The British East India Company. How much did the British East India Company put up?
Listen,
you know, before I can't oppose injustice if the budget is too.
He's consistent. He told them two white boys on that stage, "Don't call me Killer Mike unless you got the bag."
Right. We never asked what he was killing when he called himself killer. We never specified. We
never did.
We just thought anybody and anything could get it. For when it comes to capitalism, when it comes to the police, he's Cuddly Mike. He ain't no threat. When it comes to the NRA, he's Cuddly Mike.
But see, on the morning show,
has animosity for poor and working class Black people.
That's why the chat called me out today in the morning show, Diallo, because we call him Cuddly on Friday, and they're like, you over here on Tuesday talking about we don't name call, we could disagree in this, that. So I had to cop to it. I had to accept it, be like, you're right, we called him Cuddly. And if that equates to us being the suckers he can't speak to about Cop City. Now, listen, just real quick. I mean, in all seriousness, one of the reasons you heard about it on our platform, to be fair, is because Kamau Franklin and community movement builders have been among some of the prominent Black voices involved. To even be fair, at least through interview and discussion, our comrade Kalanji, who's down in Atlanta, has also been involved in covering the issue with more substance than admittedly we got in his interview with Killer Mike. But that's Mike's fault more than anything else. Right. And part of the little inside joke that your audience is getting hip to here is Mike's response to Kalanji about saying, when asked, because I and some others had attempted to ask him publicly, like, where are you on Cop City? You like promoted as this black radical rapper from Atlanta, a people's movement leader. Here's this major event happening, and we haven't seen boo. So Kalonji asked him, so what's up with Cop City? And Mike's response was, basically what we were saying. I'm not talking to them other cats, whoever that was supposed to be. We assume that we are in that group.
I don't assume that. I'd like to believe he likes me.
Bad. I don't speak for Diallo.
No, he's bringing me down.
He likes Diallo.
No, he don't.
Yes,
just Jared
like
and Geechee.
Yes.
But he was willing. He said, I'm willing to come on with you, Kalonji, because I know and trust you. And then he made the point that Diallo was referencing, that he was basically saying, man, they got $100 million budget. How we can't. I mean, it was the craziest. We can't fight it. It's got too much funding. We might as well just. It was his JT response of hey, this is capitalism. We already.
See, if it was a $10 million budget, he kicked down the gates.
Well, I don't know.
But 90 million, you can't go up against that.
I hate to assume, but when he came on to quiet the riot with Killer Mike and T.I., he came on crying, saying, I'm a son of a police officer, crying about both of his police. So, and then he said he looks at the T.I. He want to be like T.I., getting state contracts, government contracts, whether it's affordable housing. I just wouldn't be not so surprised if there's some type of transaction that's going to happen with, whether it be like Jay-Z did with the NFL, help us work on some race issues. I just wouldn't be surprised if the boy got some deals going on with Cop City. So it would be interesting to see that them paperwork come out soon. Because in the hood they say, well, your paperwork, make sure you ain't no snitch. So when we see that paperwork,
I did see like some people in the comments that were, or it might have been, I don't know if it was in the comments or it might have been on the tweet that Kamal had tweeted today about what Mike said. And somebody did make the point that he comes from a family of police officers, and does he feel that being anti-police is in some way shitting on his family's legacy? You know what I'm saying?
I come from a long family of police. My great uncle, my grandmother's baby brother, was two of the first Black detectives appointed to the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. My favorite uncle is a 30-year veteran of the police department and homicide detective. My youngest uncle was the dude that ran the whole 911 and send out the Amber Alert tweets. He was civilian staff of the police department. My family come from both police departments. My family come from very strong church presence and very strong affinity to eat pork ribs and pork chops. You can't fall back on your family to excuse your own inadequacies. You can deviate when your family. I still show up and I love my relatives, but they know my position. So that's some bullshit. That's some bullshit.
But you also don't have a swag shop that if some shit go down, you need to call the police to protect. So
you don't need to call the police to protect. You call the police and get the insurance number and file the claim. That's all you need from the police. I've had a business where the windows was bust out. I've had some issues. The only thing I call the police for is give me the goddamn incident report and the number, whatever number, so I can give to the insurance company and keep it moving. Police ain't there to thwart crime. That's only in comic books and cartoons.
That's a fact. When it comes to Cop City, and the great work that different brothers and sisters are doing in Atlanta, and we're looking at the militarization of the police and a place to where they can even further that, and we look at what happens locally, especially in the major cities, as far as police misconduct and state sanctioned violence. especially against Black people, it doesn't seem like it would be hard to actually come out and say that, hey, I am against that. And I noticed that, you know, he kind of danced around that portion. He gave a long, elaborate answer, but when he was asked again, hey, are you for or against? He wouldn't say yes or no. And I'm not
he said no.
okay.
He said that he was
We just
put here to love his wife, and he promised God he was love his wife, and it's loving his wife over getting behind that, right? And if you read between the lines, supporting that will fuck up your bag. Fuck up your bag will not allow you to support your wife.
and again, there weren't there activists there that have gotten hit with the RICO?
Yes.
All right, and so we've had activists there that have been murdered. Do you think, again, as we have talked about some of the ills of capitalism throughout this show, when I've never been rich. I've never had the type of money that he has, or had, you know, that type of wealth. But I can only speak from my, perspective, and just trying to maybe throw him a bone here. But do you think that it is a thing to where a lot of these entertainers who, I guess, call themselves, or who occupy or attempt to occupy some of these activist spaces, do you think that in the long run, it's whenever they're faced with the choice of, like Geechee mentioned, stand for this or potentially mess up my bag, that 9 times out of 10, they're going to stand where they'll continue to get paid and continue to live the life that they were living? Do you think that was the idea behind, yo, it's $100 million? Because obviously what's been going on at Cop City has been dangerous for activists. Like, it's not anything that you could just rap about, or have one foot in and one foot out about. We've seen the repercussions that some people have faced in this. And so when it comes to, like, I believe one time, Diallo, I believe me and you did a show where you spoke about, examples of real entertainers that were real activists, and things that they did. But at the same time, do you think it's just a thing to where, hey, like, it's easy to say one thing, but when it comes down to it, you have to really be down for the cause in order to really stand up for that type of thing?
But here's the thing, though. I understand that, but one thing I have to say, regardless of what the public figure does, I'm more disappointed in the community. We incentivize selling out. And I think that's a bigger problem than whether or not the individual will sell out or will not. But I have to say this: no matter what you do, risk is involved. Now, there's a quote from Dave Chappelle that we seem to let fall by the wayside, where he said he didn't want to be Malcolm X and Martin Luther King because they died broke. He literally said there's no pension plan for Black activists. And the first thing I thought was, man, fuck you. But the second thing I thought was, how many entertainers have died broke? How many entertainers have gone bankrupt? How many entertainers, Red Fox is somebody I admire, so it really stands out vividly, had the IRS kick in the door, wave in the 4-4, and drag all their shit out? I remember Red Fox was on the news, an iconic comedian, like, at least they let me keep my 2 dogs. I got my 2 beloved puppies. Other than that, everything else was gone. And many entertainers, regardless of what it's comedy, acting, rap, are on stage geriatric, crippled, in severe pain because they have to keep performing or starve. So that didn't discourage Dave Chappelle from going into comedy, but the potential negative outcomes of revolution discouraged him from being a black leader. It's the same thing. How many rappers have dropped dead and Cutley Mike's still putting out albums? So I don't really think it's about the risk. I really think it is about integrating with your oppressors, enjoying the spoils of war. I think it's about the lack of racial esteem, racial solidarity, and a real interest in maintaining the status quo that you have managed to be one of the minute few to elevate within. Because you want to talk about risky behaviors or behaviors that incur consequences and risk. It's literally a mantra out there: get rich or die trying.
Right.
So if you risk your life in the trap, you risk your life being a prominent celebrity. And he gets on there and talk about his real estate holdings. He gets on there and talk about his chain. He gets on there and brag about the opulence he's able to enjoy. And you don't think that brings as much risk. So it's really about your own integrity and it's really about what he values. And he values more his own ability to consume a lot of shit and mingle in what Jay-Z called the rarefied air, to sit across from billionaires and prominent white people, more so than he does about making positive contributions to our just aspirations. So I know we could talk about the risk. I acknowledge the risk. I acknowledge, and I've suffered and lived out some of the relatively minor consequences compared to what our other ancestors do. But really, we look at you risk your life for money and fiat. It's admirable and acceptable. But if you risk your status, or you risk a few decibels a few, decimals in your bank account, then you a sucker, you played yourself, it's a waste of time. It's about devaluing your own people more so than it is about valuing what you can do or valuing your own life. It's selling out.
I want to end with this, and anybody's feel free to answer. Within that interview and a lot of interviews that I've seen him in, regardless to what platform it's on, he speaks of Atlanta politics and how he grew up, and he often says that the heroes and villains were all black in Atlanta growing up, and the civil rights movement in Atlanta and in Georgia as a whole was something that was that he was influenced by, and different activists that he said I guess helped mentor him, whenever he was younger, within the greater Atlanta community. Whenever we look at Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, obviously you have a lot of there's just like any major city, there's extreme poverty and there's a lot of wealth. What's different about Atlanta in some cases is that you might go to Buckhead and still see black families in those big homes. And so do you think that with his idea that the heroes and villains were all black growing up in Atlanta, and T.I. called it Atlanta Wakanda at one time, this do you think that politics in Atlanta, the illusion of what Atlanta is, that Wakanda, do you think that goes into maybe leads to some misunderstanding in Killer Mike's politics and possibly even T.I. and people, because I know everybody from Atlanta is not that way, but I'm just saying when it comes to entertainers and and people that grew up there, I hear a lot of the same rhetoric with entertainers that I like to appear in these activist spaces as well.
Can I just say something real quick? I just got 2 quick points, and I'll cede the time to my comrades here. So just listen. T.I. once said infamously from one of those stages that if you're not from the hood, you can't comment on the hood, and you should stay out of the discussions of the hood and how people in the hood do their things. And I resonate with that. I can identify with at least the sentiment, if not the full, complete logic, right? But the flip side is not held to be true. So if there's that level of standard for the hood, why then can't that standard be applied to activism, economic analysis, movement building, etc.? Or is it just to be argued that just the fact of having been raised in the hood that you are competent and qualified to speak on any and everything? So that would be my one. And then to the point about Wakanda, I think it's perfect because one of my fundamental questions about these Wakanda films is, or points to point out of the many that we could discuss, is where is it discussed in these films how the economy in Wakanda works? When they give you those panoramic scenes of the beautiful city and the functioning and this, that, and the third, and the people walking down the street, who made the clothes? Who's in the shops? Who's cleaning up? Who's preparing the food? Who's processing? In other words, and the absence of that. But my point is, just quickly, the absence of any discussion of that is paralleled in the conversation we often hear from people like Killer Mike and T.I. There's this fantasy of what could exist without any without any sign of real understanding of how all of it works. And when you don't have to worry about that context, you can of course come in with fantasies of businesses and banks and real estate deals and stock and celebrity, because there's no need to fill in the blanks with anything meaningful, because it's all just symbolic and empty, like Wakanda.
Wow. Yeah, I've never seen it in the movies. I've never seen a janitor in Wakanda. When I come back and think about it, right? Everybody's happy in the street dancing.
I mean, they're walking down the street with all these bags and clothes. Who made the clothes? Where'd the bags come from? What's in the bag?
I go back to
if you read the comics, there is a tribal hierarchy, and Man-Ape, what's the guy that plays Man-Ape? They changed his
real name. You talking about in the movie, like his name in the movie?
Right, but in the comic book, he's literally a man in a gorilla suit.
Yeah.
And I think Disney wisely changed his motif. But if you go and Google Man-Ape, there is a revolutionary uprising against the African oligarchs, and there's a big struggle within Wakanda to unseat the monarchy, because the hill tribes and the tribes that lived in the highlands are exploited. Their land is exploited. They're starving and don't have resources. And they try to assassinate Wakanda. So actually in the comic book, it is more realistic in terms of the tribal conflicts that are based on the resources and the lack of the rigidity of the hierarchy, and people who are relegated to the lower caste or the lower tribes in the Wakanda. So it actually is sussed out if you want to take your time to read the comic books.
Well, maybe they knew that, or they luckily hit the nail on the head, because for the last, I don't know, almost 5 to 10 years, Atlanta has been ranked #1 in all cities for the biggest wealth gap between the poor and rich.
Wow.
And their Gini score is really exposed to show the inequalities there. So, and then there's a working class and a struggle down there, like you see the comrades in Cop City, that maybe shit gonna go down. And you did see when the uprising happened, who they call out there? Killer Mike and T.I. Take your ass out there and start crying and tell the people don't burn down your house.
Right. And that's exactly. And I didn't want anybody to get anything misconstrued, that I'm speaking of entertainers in Atlanta and their class consciousness, the activists who are actually doing the work and protesting Cop City in Atlanta much respect, much appreciation for the servant, for your service. So I don't want to get that confused, but yeah, like that's a wild notion to think about, this black utopia of that they attempt to sell us in Atlanta being Wakanda, and the wealth disparity between the poor and the rich is the highest there in among major cities in America. That's wow, that's something to
Well,
think about.
but I do want to say this. This kind of the whole stopping the militarization of the police. Like we just I'm sorry I don't remember the brother's name, but we just had a guy who was literally beat to death. The cops
Oh
beat
yeah,
the man to death with their bare hands,
yeah.
and the police have been committing atrocities and repressing the black community since before the first formal police force was, when they had six shooters and wooden billy clubs, when they, whether it's, riding a horse in a squad car or an armored vehicle, the police have played the same role. So even if, as the people, black people who never faced a militarized police force, were still victims of atrocity and repression, infiltration, and subversion by the police. You know, the Nazis weren't bad because they employed blitzkrieg tactics. So it's just, I don't want the police to be militarized. I don't want the police to be armed at all, whether it is with high capacity magazine or with just 6-shot revolvers. But to me, I hear that what went from targeting the police as a institution as a whole is just targeting their techniques and their tactics and their armaments and their uniforms, as
Mm.
opposed to, so I always get kind of concerned when we lock in on the fact that they're militarized. And we
Do-
see that when there is rebellion and uprising, they always bring in the National Guard and formal military anyway. So there's always a military option to deploy against black people, even if the local police aren't militarized.
I forgot the brother's name, but what's the brother's name that made the new F the police video on YouTube?
FD.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, FDC.
Yeah, what were your, you know, he kind of talked about that some as far as what actual abolishing the police and abolition was, and um a lot of, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, that police don't they don't prevent crimes. That's not what they do. And he even went in the video, I think he even went into a Supreme Court decision that said that legally they don't have to. That's not what they're there for. They're there to protect land and businesses and corporations. So
Or even more insidious, they're there to defend the status quo.
mm,
I would argue, and I've seen evidence that, especially when I lived in New York, the average cop in New York City had his whose anti-Semitic ideas are as deeply seated as their racism, but they weren't busting and stopping and frisking Hasidic Jews.
mm,
And it wasn't because they weren't anti-Semitic; it was because of the status that the Hasidic Jewish community held in Brooklyn, New York.
They
right,
bust back and burn shit down.
right.
Exactly. I was in New York on 9/11. I saw how the NYPD engaged with the large Palestinian and larger Middle Eastern community prior to 9/11 and after 9/11. Their status and position within the hierarchy changed. So they began to be, not that they became more criminal or committed more crimes or stuff. So the police defend the status quo. And that's what they've always, and even if, like companies, if a corporation runs afoul of the police, will attack any vulnerable segment of the population that the larger power structure deems worthy of attack or unworthy of protection. So And we also see that the police can be brought to heel with the proper amount of organization and the proper level of engagement and control of the larger political system overall. So again, I just quote KRS-One, the police department, if we wake up and unite, the police department would lose the fight.
Mm. Mm. Well, with that said, everybody, make sure you go subscribe to Black Power Media. Make sure you check out the Earn Your Liberation podcast every Friday morning. Also, make sure you subscribe to the Brother Diallo show. Jared Geechee Diallo, I definitely appreciate y'all for coming through. Oh yeah, get the book. What is the myth? I mean, the myth and propaganda of Black buying power, 2nd edition, by Jared Ball. Definitely make sure you get that. Matter of fact, is there a certain way you would want them to get that? Because I'm not sure if they get it on Amazon that you will see. You know, I'm not sure how that works, so I don't know if you want them to get it directly or.
I'm not making it. The point isn't to make me money, and I'm not making much off of it. So however they want to get it is fine. mixwithilike.org has all the options, digital copies. They can get
Abby
the first
Hoffman,
edition
steal
for
that
free.
book.
Whatever you got to do.
Get your Abby Hoffman on.
My preference
And if
would
they
be
catch you, say the author told you.
The author told him to. If my real preference would be to catch me at one, in person at some event or at an activist event or where you might even get the book for free. So, but yeah, however they want to get it, mixwithilike.org. I really appreciate the invitation and the discussion. It's always good to build with the fellas. So thank you all very much.
No doubt. Peace.
All right.
Peace.
Good night, y'all.